Okay, perfect. Thanks for having me. So we only have 30 minutes. I'm German, so I will stop on time. So let's dive into it directly. So let me introduce you, before we get started a little bit more with gamification, with the topic, let me introduce you to 4 different kind of applications. So what you see here is, I think it's easy to see. You have an augmented reality version. You can stand inside the industrial production. Building, sorry. And by looking at all the different kind of engines, you see immediately the data that's coming out of that. You can, only by looking at that, you get the feedback, how the engine is doing, how they are interconnected with others, with the other engines, what's working, what's not working, and of course you can even, not of course, but you can use the technology also to control the engine just by looking at different kind of points at the engine. One application. The second one, here again, augmented reality, it's for shift scheduling. And you see all the data of the different persons, skills, availabilities, whatever. And just by looking at the whole data in total, the whole context, you get a sense about what's matching, what's not. And the brain, it's an amazing pattern-seeking engine. And so you realize immediately what's being able to connect, what's matching each other, what doesn't match so far. So it's very easy to create shift schedules with that kind of application. No matter what kind of data you're putting into the system. At the end, it's only about patterns, and if the user is recognizing, okay, that pattern fits, that doesn't, whatever. The second one, it's also augmented reality. There you are driving, you're controlling different kind of production, real-time logistic as a production containers, and that was being built for FAIR. As an example, it's for SEV Eurodrive, if you know the company, huge industrial company in Germany. And here we were a little bit inspired by the controllings of StarCraft, for example, the mechanics, and we put them onto the screen by having a camera looked at all the different containers and how they're driving, and then it's easier for you. It makes it a little bit more intuitive to control them. But so far, it's just for controls. It's nothing more. Okay? The fourth one, it looks like a game. It is a game. It's what we call a serious game. It's also for training, learning about data, about IT security, sorry. This was for different kind of purposes, like, for example, phishing mails, how to learn what is a phishing mail, how to build them. You can switch views or the sides. You can be the bad guy, you can be the good guy. Okay, I'm not going deeper into these examples, but we will need that for the next slides. So 4 different kind of applications. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is we call it enterprise gaming. The point is, why a new term? Because if we differentiate better between different kind of terms, it makes it easier for customers to understand what is it for, what is the advantage, and what is the disadvantage. Yeah, when we are all together, we know a lot about the gamification stuff. So when we talk about gamification, to be honest, I have no clue if you only say gamification, if you mean serious games, simulation, game-based learning, escape rooms, whatever. It's true, it all depends to the same category, but actually, as you know also, there are really particular differences. And only if the customer, who has no clue about all the differences, has different terms for everything, it made life much easier for us to get the right product to the right solution. So in what normally is being called gamification, and everything is put under this umbrella, we call it enterprise gaming, because gamification is a category by itself for us. Okay, I will explain that in a minute. Okay, so this is the matrix that tries to communicate what is enterprise gaming, because it's really a broad approach. On one side, we have real games. Okay, you're creating a game. You say, okay, why the people are sitting down playing the game? Actually, they're solving real-world problems or real company problems or whatever. But you know exactly you're playing a game. That's also important because this means your mind is in a psychological state of playing a game. Okay, that means you will behave different as if you would be involved in a gamified activity that's happening in reality and not inside a game. Okay, I will explain that in a minute. Okay, one side, serious games. The other side, this is what we call gamification. Using game mechanics in non-game context. For us, that means we don't want you to feel like if you would play a game, because then you would be in a game-like context with all the psychology stuff happening and be connected to that. That means, and this is what I really love about the whole thing about enterprise gaming or game thinking or gamification, however you call it. I love this kind of side because I want to improve what's actually broken. I want to improve real business processes, customer loyalty relationships, whatever, employee processes, services, software, and I want to improve them by becoming more natively, like if you would play a game, but I don't want to distract you. I don't want to build something in addition to distract you from your actual work. Okay? It's not better than the other approaches, it's just a different kind of approach, and I think it has advantages in particular context, it has huge disadvantages in particular context, but this is how I see the world. Okay? Gamification, we improved reality, we made it more native for you, and actually in the best case, you don't know that you're playing a game. You say, hey, it makes sense now, it's more native, but you would never think about, oh yeah, I'm playing a game. We improved reality by looking at what's working in games. Serious games, you know exactly you're playing a game, and of course then there's something in between, okay? A whole bunch of different kind of projects. And on the vertical side, we have game thinking approaches, no matter if it's about serious games or gamification, that are happening within their world, so no real life connection. What happens inside a game stays in a game, like if you play a flight simulator directly, everything stays in the game. Of course, you're learning as a pilot, and hopefully you take the learnings with you into reality, but on the bottom, what happens inside the game stays in the game, okay? And then on the other side, we have categories of products or services connected directly with reality. That means while you're playing a game, and the things that you decide how to behave in a game, the controllings, whatever you do, has immediate impact in reality. So by playing a game, actually, it could be that you're controlling real-time production lines. You're controlling, let's say, real-time shift scheduling, whatever. Okay? Whatever you do inside the game, it happens directly in reality. Or, on the right, on the top, pure gamification from my point of view, you're doing the job how you did it all the time, but it now became much more native, okay? So what happens inside the game doesn't stay in the game. We have four different kind of areas. So this is what we call the safe room. I think it's a no-brainer, right? You're playing a game, what happens inside the game stays in the game. Then we have the competence room. This is you're playing inside the game. It's a little bit of a safe zone, but again, we are using the data for real-time issues or real-time activities, but of course, because we are sitting between both worlds, the game and the reality, we can control it, so there's not really something you can destroy. Then we have the training room. It's like a real-life situation, simulation. We make things more natively. We made it easier for you to understand, to learn, because in games, you're learning in a totally different kind of way, like you're learning in a classroom. What I mean by that is not that you're sitting in a classroom like here, and then you have to learn. Games are much more fun, sure. What I mean by that is that learning actually, like we understand it in school, and also how we understand it most often in all these educational training stuff in companies, it's for performance learning. It's for learn that, I will ask you questions, and I will see if you got it, and then it's done, okay? If you want to have performance learning, if you want to have people to succeed in performance learning, you need totally different kind of learning mechanics, of learning approaches, like if we would try to get you to a lifelong learning. That means lifelong learning means you're being in a situation, you get the feedback, you learn out of the situation, and then perhaps you do something totally different, and 2 months later, you experience a totally different kind of context, but where the learnings help you. And so you can transfer it. If you design for performance learning, the groups who did best in the test normally are the worst in the second example, and vice versa. And so then we have reality. This is what is my additional way of work. This is what I call gamification. Of course, again, this is what I call gamification. It doesn't mean that it's not right how others are using that. It's just how we decided to call the different kind of categories. Okay, and then we have something, and this is what you have normally in all these categories, we have something like a dashboard, okay? So we have something like a hub, information hub, where you have your own data, individual data in the best way. In the best case, it's also about real-time data. It's connected to all the different kind of categories, however or wherever you are involved in, okay? This is your personal hub. And we have that all the time with us also in reality. I mean, if you're doing sports, for example, the dashboard is, and let's say you play handball, okay? So everything you see on the playing field is like your board game, the board that you're looking at, and everything that you know about your skills is like your dashboard. We need these two worlds, no matter what we are doing, because only on the one side, the dashboard, our skills, our resources, what we know we can use, and on the other side, reality or the context of the game, only if we can make sense of both of these worlds, we can connect them. We see the pattern, what's working, what kind of resources can I use, what kind of mission or task could I tackle or not, whatever, okay? You need these kind of data. The interesting thing is, if you provide to someone both worlds, the dashboard and the context, you don't need any kind of mission description. You don't need goals anymore. You don't need rules anymore. The brain by itself starts to play a game because of making sense of the data. It's a pattern-seeking engine. It wants to connect to fix broken patterns, and this is the best way, from my point of view, to get the mind into a playful situation without telling someone what to do. And the most fascinating thing about that is, if you don't tell someone what to do, you don't tap into the fallacy or the trap of trying to reward people extrinsically. You don't rely on points anymore, you don't rely on badges anymore, whatever. Of course you can use them, but it's not the main element anymore. Okay? And all of us, we know exactly we don't want. If we are honest to ourselves, we don't want to be told what to do. The amazing thing in a game, it's always that even if the game, by its patterns, rules, tells us what to do, we have the feeling it's autonomous. Okay, I make sense out of it. I decided what kind of strategy I want to use, resources I want to take, whatever. Okay? And if you think about that in reality, this is a fact that's most often missing. The feeling of autonomy, not really businesses, connections, relationships with customers, whatever, it's not really designed for autonomy. Okay, just let me get a little bit nerdy, and most of you probably know that kind of stuff. Okay? The hook model near Ryan. Who knows that stuff? Oh, perfect. Okay. So some of you know that, some don't. The point is, and I don't want to go deep into that, there's one main factor inside of that theory that I think is really, really important if you want to create a gamification design or gamified approach for the long term, so a sustainable one. So normally everything that we do is being done with these 3 points. Okay, there's a trigger, someone tells you to do something, or Starbucks tells you, hey, if you buy a coffee right now, you will get double the points, whatever. There's a trigger. Advertisement, the traffic light goes green, that's a trigger, okay? Then we have the action, depending on the trigger and if we want to do that or not. And then there's the feedback. Normally it's, okay, I've done that. If you look at most of the motivational stuff, it's also about here you get something. So it's about if then. If you do something, then you will get something. This is how the world normally is being built around us. Also in companies when it's around okay, let's go forward. Okay, the fourth element, and this is one of the most important ones, is personal investment. And I think it's totally correct. Niraj says, if you think that if you value something in a much more sense, or most often it's because you have put a lot of effort into the stuff. Time and so on. Do you know, who knows the Ikea Effect? Okay, more than the hook model. The point is, if you build different kind of furniture, from Ikea, the point is you value them much higher because you put so much effort in that. Yeah? It's not rational, because it took you more time. You paid a lot of money to build it at the end by yourself. But at the end, you value it much higher. And this is also the same case with games. People love to play games. People stay playing games for 10 years, not because it's still the most amazing game that they know. It's because they put so much effort into that kind of game, it just would be stupid to change. Okay? The hook model. It's not just in games happening, it's happening all over. That's behavior psychology. The basic, the foundation of gamification, game design thinking from my point of view. Okay, and this is also something that we all know. The flow channel, I have to wrap it up. Sorry, I really like to talk, but I don't have time. Okay, flow model, frustration, if something is too hard, boredom if something is too easy, and in the middle we have the perfect ratio. What that means is every time you do something, if I give you a task right now that has the perfect ratio between your skills and the challenge, you are inside the flow, okay? In the ideal, let's say it's in the idealistic way. The point is every time you do the task, you become better. Okay, every time your brain learns, you become better, perhaps it becomes a behavior, and suddenly it's much too easy. That means the task itself has to grow with you in a qualitative way, not in a quantitative way. Just to say, now do more of the same stuff just faster, won't work. Okay? And this is what games are doing. They are realizing is if you're good enough, they increase difficulty faster. If you're not good enough, they wait for you. This is what makes games, sports, hobbies, all the same activities so engaging. Okay, and sometimes the point is you're not always in the flow. Most often, you're failing right before you get into it. And this is why we love. We love failing. We fail in games 80, 90% of the time. If we wouldn't fail, we think it's boring and we would quit. So just to try to gamify something, an example that we really often see is to make it as easy as possible and then just to say, okay, here's something as a badge or point or whatever, reward, that doesn't make sense. Because a boredom or let's say, frustrating activity incentivized with points is still boring or frustrating. Okay? You have to change the system. This is my only truth in gamification. You're chasing your better self. You as a gamification designer, you have to build for someone to become better. It's always about, and if you want to create competition, because I really don't like that. And I think it's not, we are not so competitive as everyone thinks, and also research is showing that. But if you want to build competition against yourself, against your former self. Because if you realize that you got smarter out than you went in, this is the stuff that you like. And then you're realizing the effort, hook model comes into the place, Ikea Effect, and so on. Okay, let's go back to the examples to wrap it up, just to make a sense out of it. So in the middle, we have some kind of dashboard, okay, your personal data, as an employee or whatever. So why am I telling you that? Because I think you can use gamification as, on the macro level, as an operating system for every business that works at the same time on an operating level and on the planning level. And it goes with you through the company when you are being promoted or whatever, or when your task changes. But you can always stay in the same gamified or game thinking approach in the macro, and in the micro you have these different kind of approaches. So, game, and what happens inside the game? Serious game. Okay, you know exactly you're playing the game. This was built for an energy company in Germany. Okay, people sit down, play the game, and learn what to do in IT security and whatnot. Second example, the one that I showed you, shift scheduling. So someone is staying in the conference room trying to match the right shifts. So it's like a training simulation. But of course, if he already does something that's fitting, that's perfect during his training situation, we can measure the data and we can take this example that he just came up with when we see, okay, that really makes sense, and put it into reality in the real shift scheduling, even if it's not responsible for that. But we can use the data if it makes sense. The second one, it could be a training area. You're in reality, you're getting the data, and you think you're controlling all the stuff, but perhaps we are adding some kind of information just to test out different kind of capacity variations of the production line or whatever and see how you react. Can we learn something out of it? Can we use your cognitive power to solve the problem? And the point is, if you don't know that it's just a fake simulation, you're much more effective. It's amazing. And then on the other side, we have this gamified approach where someone is really controlling whole production lines by the role model of, in this case, we were inspired, as I already said, by StarCraft. and using that. So 4 different kind of micro activities. I don't have the time to go too deep into that. 4 different ones, so far not connected with each other. But now imagine, okay, we changed that. We have the training simulation in the beginning. You're learning all the stuff. You're learning what to do, what not to do. And now, if someone else in the company writes an email, we take that email, put that email into the system of the training simulation, training area, and so it's being, for example, delayed for 5 minutes until it's sent out to the world, the email. And during these 5 minutes, the people performing in the training simulation are checking the whole email. So they're getting real-time data, using that in the game. They think it's a game, they behave like in the game, and then we take the data, whatever they come up with, and put it out. But then perhaps we have some kind of phishing email there. We found some kind of error, virus, whatever. Then we can simulate it, right, with the same data, whatever it is, like what kind of virus it is, whatever. We can simulate it right into the production line. And so, as I told you, the guy staying on the balcony, looking at the hall, he now get the real-time data of the system, of the mails, of the virus, and we simulate how he would solve the problem. Let's say if the virus would be there to stop the engines, the production line, industrial espionage, okay? And then, however he behaves, I like you. However he behaves, sorry, no, I know. However he behaves, we can take this kind of data and give it into the controls of the guy who's actually manually controlling the containers. And so it becomes a whole system. So everything is on the micro level, a gamified solution by itself, in all these different characters, but we can connect them to a bigger enterprise game on the macro level, and so we can create a whole operational engine for a company that's built with game thinking. And so, as I said, you can use it for all the different kind of categories: production, management, planning, whatever, strategic decisions, and people. The point is, if you perform in a particular way in the bottom left, and then you have to do something in the top right, you can take your data with you. The system can adjust to that. One last sentence?
Please.
Okay, let me introduce you to the double R combo. No, it's not Roman Rackwitz, but it's really smart of me that I did that. It's called, I use that for reframing as a resource. So if there's one quick win you can take with you now, today, from me, there's one thing. It helped me really a lot over the last decade. The point is, so far most often we are thinking into this reward system. You do something, if then you get something. And it's really difficult to get over that, also for me, after a decade of trying not to. The point is we have a process. You're starting here, and then you're doing the process, and then you have an event. You did something, you achieved something, you have a result, whatever. And normally you will get something as a reward, points, whatever, a feedback that's looking back into the past. And this is difficult, because then it's always about do that and you will get something. Games are not doing that. If you really think about that, there's no game rewarding you for playing a level. The only thing a game is giving you at the end of the level is another resource, another power, another skill, another responsibility that you have to use in the second level. So what my point is with reframing resource, from now on, if you have the event, instead of giving them something that's looking back, a feedback for the past history or whatever you did, past performance, you change it into some kind of responsibility for the future. And this way, you're not rewarding anymore with extrinsic reward. You make it harder for him. So the reward in games is, if you're good in that, if you're good in playing games, they become harder. If you're good in sports, it becomes harder. If you're good in your hobby, where you're setting the rules, it becomes harder. Just think about that. And this way, I think especially from my point of view, I solved one of the biggest issues in the industry. From my individual point of view, that we are only trying to take something that's not working and try to still bribe people with points, badges, whatever, into doing the same old shit. So it's not if then, it's because of. Thanks.
Thank you, Roman.
Sorry.
Nah.